Ran wasn't just another historical epic. It was Akira Kurosawa's thunderous farewell to the grand canvas of war, chaos, and human folly. What audiences saw on screen was breathtaking: sweeping battlefields, flaming castles, and Shakespearean tragedy set in medieval Japan. But behind the scenes, chaos reigned. Horses panicked, castles burned for real. Studio executives fretted over ballooning costs, and Kurosawa himself, half-blind and nearing 75, fought to bring his lifelong vision to life. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on 20 weird facts about Ran, from costumes stitched like feudal armor to financing nightmares that nearly killed the project. These stories reveal the madness behind the masterpiece. And wait until you hear the bonus fact. It's something so startling, even die-hard Kurosawa fans rarely discuss it. Stay tuned, and let's dive into the battlefield of cinema. 1. Kurosawa took a decade to prepare. Kurosawa didn't simply make Ran, he lived it. For over 10 years, he sketched thousands of storyboards, detailed paintings of every shot, angle, and battlefield. These weren't rough doodles. They were elaborate artworks that could hang in galleries. Kurosawa once admitted, "I paint a film before I make it." By the time production began, every frame already existed in his head and on canvas. This obsessive preparation came from fear. His previous film, Kagemusha, 1980, had nearly collapsed under budget pressures. Kurosawa didn't want Ran to spiral the same way. Yet, ironically, his decade of preparation made the film even more expensive. Studios called it too ambitious, but Kurosawa wouldn't compromise. The result? A movie that looked like it had been centuries in the making, because in some ways, it was. 2. Inspired by Shakespeare and Japanese history. On the surface, Ran adapts King Lear, but the story is fused with Japan's violent Sengoku era. Kurosawa originally wanted to make a film about the warlord Mori Motonari, who famously divided his power among 3 sons. But history recorded that Motonari's sons were loyal and successful, hardly tragic. So Kurosawa twisted the tale, merging Lear's downfall with samurai treachery. The collision of East and West gave Ran a unique texture: Shakespearean betrayal against the backdrop of Japanese feudal warfare. The mix wasn't easy to sell to financiers. Some called it too foreign for Japan, too Japanese for the West. But Kurosawa thrived in contradiction. He once remarked, "Human nature is the same everywhere." Ran proved him right. Audiences worldwide understood the greed, betrayal, and madness at its core. 3. The costumes. Took 2 years to make. The dazzling costumes in Ran weren't simply movie wardrobe. They were feats of craftsmanship. Kurosawa employed traditional Japanese artisans to handcraft over 1,400 costumes. Some took months each, with silks dyed in rare pigments and armor plates forged from scratch. One producer recalled that storage rooms looked like museum vaults, packed with priceless feudal attire. Kurosawa believed costume defined character. Hidetora's robe, embroidered with golden cranes, symbolized imperial authority, while his son's vibrant colors foreshadowed their divided loyalties. Because the costumes were so heavy, actors often struggled during horseback battle scenes. But Kurosawa insisted on authenticity. No shortcuts, no polyester. The irony? Many of the outfits cost more than the actors' salaries. When critics later praised the film's visual majesty, few realized the actors were practically wearing hand-built national treasures. 4. The castle burned for real. That spectacular sequence where Hidetora's fortress goes up in flames wasn't a miniature. Kurosawa had a real castle built on the slopes of Mount Fuji, only to burn it down in one take. The construction alone took months. Japanese crews mixed traditional techniques with modern reinforcements so the castle would burn cinematically. Kurosawa positioned dozens of cameras, knowing there would be no second chance. During the shoot, silence gripped the set, only the crackle of fire and Hidetora's haunted wanderings. No music, no sound effects, just pure devastation. Later, Kurosawa explained why. Silence is more terrifying. The castle burning became one of cinema's most haunting sequences. Ironically, environmental officials later criticized the production for creating massive smoke clouds over Fuji, but Kurosawa achieved what he wanted: destruction that looked biblical. 5. Financing fell apart, then was saved in France. Kurosawa's biggest obstacle wasn't artistic, it was financial. Japanese studios refused to back Ran. They saw it as a risky vanity project from an aging director whose last films hadn't performed. Kurosawa even admitted he considered abandoning it. Enter Serge Silbermann, a French producer who had worked with Luis Buñuel. Silbermann stepped in with European financing, saving the film. Ironically, this made Ran more celebrated abroad than in Japan. Critics noted that the French seemed to value Kurosawa more than his homeland did at the time. Without Silbermann, Ran might never have existed. The deal also cemented Kurosawa's reputation as a global director, not just a Japanese one. And when Ran finally premiered, it wasn't seen as foreign-funded. It was hailed as a universal masterpiece forged through international rescue. 6. Kurosawa was nearly blind during filming. By the time Ran went into production, Kurosawa's eyesight had deteriorated so badly he was almost blind in one eye. He relied heavily on assistants and cinematographers to frame shots, yet the precision of his vision remained unmatched. How? Through his painted storyboards. Crew members described them as maps they could follow exactly, ensuring Kurosawa's vision stayed intact even when his eyes betrayed him. Actors sometimes grew frustrated. He gave minimal verbal direction, trusting his visuals to communicate. But Kurosawa's insistence on detail meant nothing escaped his grasp. During battle scenes, he positioned assistants on hilltops with flags, signaling troop movements like a general directing real war. The irony? A man losing his sight created one of the most visually stunning films in history. As one crew member said, he saw more in blindness than others did in full sight. 7. 1,400 extras rehearsed like soldiers. The film's epic scale relied on more than just costumes and castles. Kurosawa used over 1,400 extras to stage the massive battle scenes, but he didn't treat them as background players. He trained them like an army. Each extra was drilled in precise formations, learning how to fall, march, and fight without breaking cinematic composition. Shooting these sequences often lasted weeks, with Kurosawa obsessing over the symmetry of formations and the chaos within order. Some extras complained about exhaustion, but Kurosawa insisted, "War is not choreography, it is organized madness." The result was breathtaking realism. Unlike Hollywood epics that relied on chaotic charges, Kurosawa crafted battles that looked painterly yet brutal. Watching them unfold feels less like a movie and more like history erupting before the camera. No CGI, no fakes, just human bodies moving like waves of destruction. 8. The sound of battle was stripped away. One of the most eerie choices in Ran comes during the massacre at the burning castle. Instead of clashing swords and screams, Kurosawa stripped away diegetic sound and laid in only haunting orchestral music. This wasn't a stylistic whim, it was deliberate psychological warfare against the audience. Kurosawa wanted viewers to feel the horror not through chaos, but through silence. Crew members initially resisted. They argued, battle without sound won't feel real. Kurosawa disagreed. Real horror is not noise, it is silence after the noise. The gamble worked. Critics hailed the sequence as one of cinema's most chilling depictions of war, precisely because it denied the audience the expected sensory cues. What looked like a limitation became a masterstroke. Silence didn't weaken the carnage, it amplified it, making it unforgettable. 9. The lead actor suffered under the makeup. Tatsuya Nakadai, who played Lord Hidatora, endured hours of grueling makeup each day. The transformation into the frail, ghostly warlord wasn't easy. His cracked face and ghostly white hair required 4 to 6 hours of prosthetics and paint every morning. Nakadai later admitted the weight of the makeup and wigs made him dizzy during long shoots, especially under hot lights. Kurosawa demanded subtle, controlled movement from him, a man weighed down by age and regret. So Nakadai performed in slow, deliberate gestures while sweating beneath layers of latex and silk. Despite the suffering, the effect was unforgettable. Hidetora's descent into madness became more than acting. It felt like his body was crumbling under the artifice itself. Nakadai once joked, "By the end, I wasn't acting mad. I was mad. It was agony turned into cinematic brilliance." 10. The film nearly bankrupted. Kurosawa Productions' Ran was Kurosawa's most expensive film, costing around $12 million, astronomical for Japanese cinema in the 1980s. The budget ballooned from elaborate sets, handmade costumes, and real armies of extras. Kurosawa's own production company shouldered much of the risk, mortgaging properties and begging investors. At one point, the crew feared filming would shut down entirely. Kurosawa remained calm on the surface, but his diaries reveal stress that nearly broke him. Ironically, the film went on to be Japan's most expensive production up to that point, yet it struggled initially at the box office. Western critics adored it, and it later earned 4 Oscar nominations, but financial success came slowly. Kurosawa's gamble nearly bankrupted him. The lesson? Even legends bleed for their art, and Kurosawa bled heavily to bring Ran into the world. That's the first 10 secrets of Ran, but before we storm further into the chaos, go ahead and like and subscribe, because the next 10 facts get even darker: feuds on set, real accidents, and Kurosawa's emotional collapse. You don't want to miss what's coming. 11th. Kurosawa's daughter worked behind the scenes. Kurosawa didn't just command armies of extras, he also had family on set. His daughter, Kazuko Kurosawa, served as costume supervisor. At the time, she was an up-and-coming designer, and Ran gave her the chance to prove her skill. Managing over 1,400 costumes wasn't just an artistic challenge, it was logistical chaos. Each robe, armor set, and headpiece had to be cataloged, cleaned, and delivered daily. Kazuko kept the wardrobe department running like a military supply chain. Crew members said her attention to detail rivaled her father's. Kurosawa trusted her completely, often consulting her when actors struggled with heavy costumes. The collaboration became a family affair, blending generational artistry. Today, Kazuko is recognized as one of Japan's top costume designers, but her baptism by fire was Ran. Without her discipline, the visual splendor might have collapsed under its own weight. 12. Horses were the biggest safety hazard. The battles in Ran didn't rely on mechanical tricks. They relied on real horses, and lots of them. Kurosawa staged massive cavalry charges across dangerous terrain, and while they looked breathtaking, they were perilous. Horses slipped in mud, riders were thrown, and one extra reportedly broke several bones in a fall. Japanese animal safety standards in the 1980s weren't as strict as today, so crews improvised. Wranglers shouted themselves hoarse controlling panicked animals near fire and explosions. Kurosawa, ever the perfectionist, demanded dozens of retakes until formations looked flawless. Some crew whispered that the horses were the true victims of Kurosawa's obsession. Still, their raw presence gave the battles a terrifying authenticity. CGI could never match the dust, sweat, and danger of real horses galloping through chaos. Every hoofbeat was a gamble, every scene a risk. 13. Kurosawa considered Toshiro Mifune, but declined for decades. Kurosawa and Toshiro Mifune were inseparable. From Seven Samurai to Yojimbo, Mifune had been the director's muse. But by the time Ran entered production, the two hadn't worked together for years after personal and professional rifts. Rumors circulated that Kurosawa considered casting Mifune as Lord Hidetora. It would have been a reunion of legends. Yet Kurosawa ultimately refused, fearing Mifune's strong personality would overshadow the film. Instead, he chose Tatsuya Nakadai, who brought a quieter, more internal madness. The decision was controversial among Japanese critics who longed for the Kurosawa-Mifune magic. But Kurosawa stuck to his instincts, not Mifune's volcanic energy, but Nakadai's ghostly despair. Ironically, Ran is now celebrated for its restrained performance style, something Mifune might have resisted. It was the end of one era and the beginning of Kurosawa's final vision. 14. The makeup team studied No. Theater masks. Hidetora's haunting appearance wasn't just inspired by old age, it was drawn from Japan's oldest theatrical traditions. Kurosawa instructed the makeup team to study No theater masks, especially those representing spirits and ghosts. The cracked white face, heavy eyebrows, and frozen expression gave Hidetora a supernatural aura. Nakadai often said he felt less like a man and more like a living mask. This was intentional. Kurosawa wanted Hidetora to embody both a human king and a cursed specter, trapped between life and death. The influence of No infused the film with spiritual dread, echoing Japan's ancient storytelling. Western critics saw Lear's madness. Japanese audiences recognized something deeper, a man transformed into a ghost before he even dies. 15. Kurosawa controlled the weather. Sort of the film's most unforgettable images rely on weather, rolling mist, wind-whipped flames, and clouds looming over battlefields. Kurosawa didn't leave this to chance. He hired meteorologists to track conditions around Mount Fuji and surrounding landscapes, sometimes delaying shoots for days until the sky looked perfectly apocalyptic. Crew members joked he had a direct line to the gods. On some days, Kurosawa positioned smoke machines for miles, blending natural fog with artificial haze until the battlefield looked like a ghost world. He even staged fires at specific times of day so that sunlight caught the smoke in painterly streaks. The result wasn't luck, it was obsession. If the sky is wrong, the scene is wrong, Kurosawa said. The irony? What seemed like nature's raw fury was often an orchestration worthy of a symphony conductor controlling clouds. 16. Crew members called him the Emperor. On set, Kurosawa's authority was absolute. Crew nicknamed him Tenno, the Emperor. It wasn't just about his age or reputation, it was his commanding presence. Assistants said when Kurosawa walked onto the battlefield set in his trademark white hat and sunglasses, silence fell. He gave instructions with military precision, often through gestures instead of words. Some younger crew resented the discipline, calling it oppressive, but others said it inspired loyalty. No one wanted to disappoint him. His reputation was so commanding that even veteran actors hesitated to question him. Yet behind the stern exterior, Kurosawa occasionally revealed warmth. He joked with extras, shared food, and praised those who endured his relentless standards. Still, the emperor image stuck, not a dictator of cruelty, but a ruler of vision. On Ran, Kurosawa wasn't directing just a movie. He was commanding a kingdom. 17. A real battle. Almost broke out. During one of the large-scale battle scenes, chaos spilled beyond the cameras. Hundreds of extras, many inexperienced with horses or weapons, became overwhelmed by the heat, smoke, and noise. Tempers flared. At one point, rival groups of extras, hired from different regions, began shouting insults and nearly brawled with real spears. Assistant directors rushed in, physically separating groups before disaster struck. Kurosawa, perched on a ridge, reportedly didn't flinch. He watched calmly, then repositioned the extras as though the near riot had been part of his plan. Later, one crew member recalled, "He didn't see panic, he saw choreography." Ironically, the tension bled into the final footage, giving the battles their raw edge. What looked like carefully staged violence was sometimes real conflict boiling under the surface. Kurosawa had demanded authenticity, and the set nearly delivered too much of it. 18. The editing took a year filming, wrapped after nearly 2 years of shooting, but Ran wasn't ready for release. Editing consumed another full year. Kurosawa's meticulous eye demanded that each frame flow like brushstrokes in a painting. He would sit for hours comparing shots of clouds, debating which one captured the right mood of doom. Editors described the process as both inspiring and excruciating. Unlike modern productions, Kurosawa resisted assistants making rough cuts. He wanted to shape the rhythm himself, frame by frame. This agonizing pace sometimes drove producers to despair. They needed the film finished. But Kurosawa refused to rush. The result was a film that moves like a symphony. Slow, inevitable, devastating. When critics later praised its operatic rhythm, few realized that flow had cost an extra year of Kurosawa's life. It wasn't editing. It was sculpting time itself. 19. Critics in Japan were lukewarm at first. While Ran is hailed globally as Kurosawa's late-career masterpiece, Japanese critics were initially divided. Some admired its grandeur, but others dismissed it as too Western or too Shakespearean. The irony is bitter. While Kurosawa was worshipped abroad, his homeland often treated him with suspicion. Younger Japanese directors accused him of chasing foreign approval. Kurosawa himself admitted the criticism wounded him, but he shrugged it off. Abroad, Ran was celebrated as a cinematic triumph, winning awards in Europe and earning 4 Academy Award nominations. Only after its global success did Japan begin to reappraise it. The strange truth? The film about betrayal and blindness mirrored Kurosawa's own experience. Unloved by his own, embraced by outsiders. History eventually vindicated him, but the initial reception was a reminder. Even emperors are not prophets in their own land. 20. Kurosawa called it his last testament. Kurosawa often said Ran felt like a culmination, his cinematic farewell. He was 75, his health failing, his eyesight dimming. He poured his darkest fears into Hidetora, the terror of aging, of losing power, of being betrayed by those closest. In interviews, Kurosawa admitted the story was personal. "This is my Lear, my world." While he would go on to make a few more films, Ran was his last grand epic. Crew members said he treated every day of filming as sacred, as if it might be his last. The result feels like a director leaving his testament carved in fire and blood. Not just a war story, but a meditation on mortality itself. Ran wasn't just a film, it was Kurosawa's epitaph in motion pictures, his chaotic farewell to the world. Bonus fact: Kurosawa tried to paint death. Here's the strangest secret. Before shooting began, Kurosawa locked himself in his studio for weeks, painting dozens of canvases of burning castles, weeping warlords, and barren landscapes. But one series stood apart: paintings of his own death. Crew members revealed that Kurosawa created eerie self-portraits, dressed as Hidetora, wandering through ash and ruin. He never explained why, but some suspected he believed Ran would kill him, or that he was preparing for his legacy beyond life. These paintings were never meant for the public, but a few have surfaced in museums. They reveal a man confronting mortality head-on, using brush and film alike. It wasn't just storyboarding, it was exorcism. Kurosawa wasn't only making Ran, he was painting his own funeral march. Ran began as a film about war and betrayal, but became something deeper, a mirror of Kurosawa's fears, obsessions, and genius. It nearly bankrupted him, exhausted his cast, and demanded sacrifices from hundreds. Yet out of chaos came majesty. Today, it stands not only as one of cinema's greatest epics, but as proof that vision can triumph even in ruin. If you enjoyed uncovering the madness behind the masterpiece, hit like, subscribe, and share your favorite fact. Because in the world of cinema, as Kurosawa showed us, the line between creation and destruction is always razor thin.